Okay, hi, my name is Paulina. Hello, everybody, and welcome to our online kitchen talk tonight. For those of you who are joining us for the first time, you can see I am in a kitchen, and the idea of our online kitchen talk format comes from our media conferences that we usually have every year in different countries when it's not COVID, and that we have a beautiful tradition that local journalists invite their colleagues from other countries to their homes, and there is a lot of wine and beer, and these are little highlights of our conferences. Last year during COVID lockdown, we started an online version, but here again, we also have a host who invites us to his or her a virtual kitchen, and we have a nice discussion. And after 1 hour, we stop the streaming that some of you are watching, and we stay among us in the Zoom call and just continue networking and exchange. So if you want to join us for this second informal part next time, you just have to register. But even if you have not registered tonight, you are still very welcome to grab a beer and participate actively in the discussion. You just have to type your questions or comments in the comments on Facebook, and we will take up your questions and comments. So tonight we will discuss a very interesting topic, how to turn very relevant data about environmental degradation that we obtain from different databases or satellites or other sources into stories that will actually reach a broader audience. And I know that tonight there are quite some colleagues here with us who are working on environmental topics, and among them those who have participated in our n-ost project, developing journalism, exposing climate change in Central Asia. So a very warm welcome to you, and also to my colleague, Boris Schneider, who was the coordinator of this project. So maybe, Boris, you say hello.
Hello, everybody. Nice to see you all here.
Yes. Hi, Boris. Yes, maybe you can post a link to your project in Facebook and Zoom so that we can share this information with our participants and guests. Sure. And let me thank also the Environmental Investigative Forum, who was co-organizing this kitchen talk tonight. And our host tonight is Tsvetelina Tomova, a co-founder of the forum. Thank you very much, Tsvetelina, and now the floor is yours.
Hi, thank you, Paulina, for the welcome, and thank you all for joining us tonight on Zoom and for watching the live stream. I assume there are people watching, so it's going to be quite exciting discussion, I hope, for me personally, but I hope for also the people watching. So yeah, as Paulina already said, I'm Tsvetelina. I'm the host. I'm going to be your host and moderator tonight, and I'm joining from Bulgaria, from Sofia. I am a project coordinator at the Environmental Investigative Forum. And as a beginning, I just want to say quickly who are we and what we do. So we are an informal network of scientists and journalists who have the opportunities to work together on environmental investigation. So our idea is to match scientific expertise with people with journalistic knowledge and experiences, so that they can produce quality reports. We do this mainly through freelancing projects. We try to find funding opportunities, support applications, find experts, and just support our members with this processes. Then we also develop some larger NGO projects, which we also want to involve our members with. And finally, we're trying to do some consultancy programs and training. And I'm very happy to say that the guest speakers tonight are 3 of our members. So we have Christina, Arlis, and Inva. I'm just gonna say a few words about them, just to introduce them, and then I'm gonna give the floor to them so that they can present their project and we start the discussion. So Christina is a Ph.D. research in hydrology and Earth observation, but she's also a freelance journalist. So this makes her a quite interesting speaker, I think. She worked on a story about the Mekong Delta, called The Drought of the Sinking Delta. And she uses a lot of satellite imagery, remote sensing, and just complex research data to make a very compelling story. Then we also have Arlis, who is an investigative journalist from Albania. He reported on illegal deforestation in the country, as well as unauthorized construction permits at UNESCO site, which is the Ohrid Lake. And I think tonight he's joining us from the banks of the lake, which is very nice. He also used some geoinformatics tools and data visualization to make his to create a story from the report. And last but not least, we have Inva, who is also a journalist from Albania. She's part of Faktoje, I think. She will correct me if I pronounce this wrongly. She's a fact-checking journalist, and she's very experienced in freedom of information requests. She's worked on a lot of projects about alternative media, a lot of things like the European Academy of Journalists between Serbia and Albania. And she has published a story about a river, protected river, I think, in Albania, and construction around it. So now I would just like to give the floor to the speakers for introduction presentations of their project. So maybe we can start with Christina and her story on Mekong Delta.
Yeah, so hi everyone. I'm very happy to be here. Thanks for having me. So like Tsvetelina said already, I'm a PhD student first and foremost. I work for AgroParisTech, which is a technical university in Paris, and for the Institut de Recherche pour le Développement. So that's the French Institute for Development Research. And my study area is in the Cambodian Mekong Delta, where a multitude of changes is ongoing, from climate change to the construction of hydropower plants upstream to land use changes, the intensification of agriculture. Quite a lot of different factors are changing, and my job during my PhD is to use hydrological modeling and remote sensing to track these changes, estimate their impacts, and build a model that will help predict future scenarios so that local stakeholders can actually prepare appropriately for the impacts that are going to happen sooner or later. And in the course of my research, I was in Cambodia, and I just noticed that it's a stark example of how a multitude of different factors is actually impacting a local population in a developing country, which are generally much, much harder hit by climate change than Western countries are. And so I decided to sort of delve into data analysis and data visualization, especially to illustrate this for a wider audience, because I know I'll be writing scientific papers about my PhD, which are only going to reach a very narrow audience. And I really wanted to make this issue available to a wider audience and in a way that is more engaging than a scientific paper. So what I did is I found an American newspaper. Well, it's not really a newspaper, it's an online publication that publishes interactive science stories. And I created an article for them using a programming environment called IDLE, which is also used by publications such as the New York Times, if you've seen any of their interactive science stories. And it's currently online, and I'm going to share my screen. I'm just going to show you very quickly what this looks like. Can you see my screen currently?
Yeah, we see it.
Great. So basically, I'm responsible for the majority of the imagery on here, the graphs, the drone footage, the illustrations from remote sensing. I worked on a cloud computing platform and used data from the European Space Agency and the North American Space Agency, so mostly optical and radar Sentinel satellites, to basically put this together. And the way it works is that readers can scroll through the article, and then they have elements in multiple sections where they can extract information that they're interested in. This is one example where you have just an illustration of how different the area looks between the dry season and the wet season. It's a tropical region. There's an annual monsoon. during the dry season, the majority of the land is cultivated with rice, and during the wet season, totally naturally, it's all inundated. And I think it's a fairly, well, interesting element, especially in a longer article of a more complex story that can help readers get a better sense of what is happening and engage more. This is like a radar illustration showing the difference in floods, for example, between August 2018, when there was a very large flood, and the year after that, when basically the same day, it was completely dry, which is a fairly big disaster for the local population. And okay, I'm going to put the link in the chat if anyone wants to have a look. But the opportunity that I wanted to take with this article too is to illustrate the often contradictory and counterintuitive effects of climate change and generally anthropogenic impact on the environment, because the delta is getting drier. The floods that people depend on for their rice cultivation, for nutrient delivery, for groundwater recharge are becoming rarer because of climate change and because of hydropower development. But at the same time, the delta is becoming more vulnerable to sea level rise because the terrain is actually lowering itself due to groundwater extraction. So there's a double threat, tripled if you also factor in climate change. And I think it was a great opportunity to illustrate that and to share it with a wider audience. So that's basically the introduction to my latest project. And if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Thank you. That was really interesting. I'm sure we're gonna discuss in more details a bit later. Maybe now we can switch to Arlis, so he can talk a bit about his story.
Hello, everyone. I am from Pogradec, which is the UNESCO site city, and I have the lake just right here when I made the investigation. So I want to correct a little bit Tsvetelina, because I made an investigation in Albania's biggest national park, which is also UNESCO recognized lately. And we have there illegal logging because deforestation is a natural process. We have there illegal logging. Except that one of the recent stories that I made is about the informal infrastructure in Pogradec, in Albanian side, and North Macedonia, which is the Lake Ohrid, which is a shared lake. And I had a short video, and I really hope that you enjoy it. And please, the host of this meeting, if it can help me with sharing it. And after that, I will be happy to receive your questions and talk more. But I want to visualize for the moment. Thank you.
Can you see the video? Yes.
Look at microphone. Going to the park, it was a nightmare. Up in the mountains, there were situation one, there were so teeny, tiny, and so narrow that like one of the wheels was in the air. There were moments that I didn't have signal. There were moments when I have the masked guys in front of me with the guns. The consequence is like they are destroying the park. They are destroying the area. They are destroying the wildlife park. They are cutting trees. Think how much this means for the farmer who lives out in the mountains. How much this means for the species, the agriculture, the villagers, who their life is basically the trees. We have always had deforestation, but illegal logging is relatively new. So this was my presentation, and I would be happy to receive your question more. Thank you.
Thank you, Arlis.
I also want to emphasize that I work a lot with data. I'm also a geoinformatic engineer, and I use Global Forest Watch a lot, and similar tools like it, because it helps like for example, in the environment, it helps like to make concrete pictures of what you want to say. For example, if you want to express something in numbers, and people won't understand it, but if you say, for example, like the illegal logging area is like 4 football fields, or when you compare with things like that, things are much clearer. And I'm happy that also a lot of journalists in Albania are using Global Forest Watch. Thank you.
Thank you again. And maybe we can also post a link in the chat to the video so people can see it later. And now I would like to give the floor to Inva as well, so she can present her project.
Hello, everyone. I'm Inva Hasanaliaj, and I'm a fact-checking journalist. I'm part of Factoria.al for 4 years now, and well, actually, the request of information, as Tsvetelina said, are an important part of our job. Even if Albania have recently new law of right of information, it's one of the best in the Europe. And but the problem is that how this law is implemented or applied by the institution, that's another thing, because day by day we face a difficult situation with most of Albanian institutions to have the information that we apply for. And Shushita River, it was one of my articles that well, basically half of the work, it was based on request of information. And I have a small presentation, it's like 3 slides, just to show you okay, I don't know if it's being shared.
Yeah, we can see it, yes.
Okay, so basically this is Shushita River, which is the second largest branch of Vjosa. Vjosa River is the last wide river in the Europe, and one of the biggest cases about the environmental problems that we all already have in Albania. Shushita, it was the article that I wrote for it. It was based on the using of the innards of Shushita by a company which is working for the Vlora Road, which aims to connect areas in the southern Albania. The thing is that the company should have like, if you see this map, there are different points where the agency of environment have made a contract with the company to use the innards in different parts of the river, so they cannot like damage the river. But the thing is that the company it was taking the innards always in the same point of the river, just to cut the cost, because they thought it will be like much more easy to, for example, take the innards in the point A rather than taking it in the point D, which is what was like far away from the location where they were making the works. We saw it in the field because we went there to make like observation of the works, and we talked with the people who live nearby, and they said that yeah, the company is like totally destroying the river, and they are taking innards only in one point, which is like destroying habitats and the plants and everything else. We tried to to contact with the company and to ask them if they were like taking inerts by law, and have they ever made like an analyze for the damages that they were causing to the river and to the environment there, and they didn't respond to us. And the second thing, it was like contacting with the Ministry of Environment, and they sent to us the map that I am showing to you right now. And the thing is that even if the ministry, we informed that this thing is happening, and they told us that we have warned the company, and we have sent to them an email, and we are just waiting till they stop taking inerts in the same point. I don't know if Tsvetelina can share the video that I've sent at the chat.
Yes, I can share it.
Yeah.
But then you have to stop sharing your screen before.
Okay. Yeah, sure.
Kompania me fjalë nuk ka leje për të shfrytzuar materialet inerte. Dhe fenomeni që ne kemi vënë që shfrytëzohen përgjatë gjithë gjatësisë së Shushicës paralelisht me ndërtimin e rrugës.
Okay, that was like a really short video, but what was happening, and if you saw at the first seconds, the river, it was like basically destroyed, and there were like giant gaps in the middle of the river, and this is something that after we have spoke with some environmental experts, that they said that it was like, if this situation is continuing for 1 or 2 years, it will definitely change the direction of the river. And they told, because they helped us with some information that we clearly couldn't have from the institution, and apparently the company didn't have a permission to use the inerts of the river, even if the Ministry of Environment claimed that they have made like a contract with a company, and that it was showed in the map. They didn't give the company a permit to use the inerts. It was like something that we saw for the first time, because it looked like the Ministry of Environment knows that they are damaging the environment, but at the same time they don't want to give them permits to do this thing. And well, it's like the road is still continuing to construct, and the company apparently is continuing to use the inerts in the river, but we still don't have any information from the institution if how they are going to stop the thing. I don't know if you have like another question, or
I'm sure we can, maybe the public will have some in a bit. I have a few for sure. Thank you all for the presentations, first of all. And as we can see, I think all of us, that these are 3 very different stories with quite a diverse data approaches. But maybe you guys can, while listening to each other's presentations, maybe you can also think if there are any similarities between the ways that the data was used or the data itself. I think maybe that's also something we can discuss about a bit. I think Arlis, what do you think about this?
Yeah, thank you. I would say that the similarities is that the three of us are on the environmental topic. The difference between my article and my colleagues is that for example, I used also like them a lot of FOI, like requests for information. And it was great because UNESCO reacted, the environment ministry reacted. I had like 2 complaints later with my editor. And but the unique part of mine, I think that I was in the heart of the park. Like I did some ground reporting. I was there when the phenomenon was happening. And this is also, for example, to emphasize the role of the local journalists, because the journalists from Tirana or the capital of countries in general have the luxury of computers, of everything that is surrounding in the capital or in the city. But we as journalists that are, for example, located elsewhere in Albania, we have the luck because we know the topics, we know what is happening in our community. And sometimes, of course, that we cooperate and help this also centralized journalists. And I think that this is my beautiful, or my difference, that I was in the heart of the park where this phenomenon was happening.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's how your story kind of stands out. I would maybe, Inva, maybe you can tell us what you think about this. Do you see any similarities between the three reports, or there's only differences that you would like to comment on?
No, I of course that I see there are a lot of similar things between our investigation, our articles. But what I wanted to emphasize after I saw the Christina presentation, it was that I immediately come to my mind other ways that I could, how can I edit something else to my article? The part with the forensical thing, with the graphics, it was like mind-blowing, and I was immediately thinking that I could have done just something like the Google map or Google satellite to see the river, how it was damaged in different parts of it. But as I wrote the article during the pandemic and the restriction of moving from Tirana to Vlora city and in Shushica River, it was like another struggle thing that I have to face. But as I saw that I could have done like much more things, and well, Christina article, it was like, yeah, it gave me like many new ideas. So it's, yeah.
Yeah, that's really great that you can learn from each other like this. Maybe Christina, you would like to give a response, or?
Yeah, I'm really happy that she liked it. I just think that, and I'm sure that Alice will agree with me since he's also in geospatial, like he's also a geospatial engineer. I think that just remote sensing, whether it's with actual satellites like Google Earth, like I used not Google Earth, I used Google Earth Engine, which is an open access cloud computing platform. So like the regular Google Earth has image updates once in a while, but Google Earth Engine makes real-time data available basically. So the Sentinel images that have a spatial resolution of 10 meters, which is pretty good and good enough to track like a lot of environmental issues, are available every, well, 3 to 5 days basically. And over Europe, the frequency is higher. So like if you wanted to track the damage to the river, it would be possible to even construct a time series of how the situation evolved. And I think that in this day and age where people are used to looking at maps on their iPhones, and it's not an issue anymore to present them with spatial data. And I think it's like working with satellite data is one of my favorite things that I'm doing during the PhD, because it's just great to illustrate things.
We people that use a lot of data, for example, me with Global Forest Watch, are very notable, and we stand up because we wear glasses.
All the computer damage to the eyes, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's really great that the discussion is kind of turning back to the data, because I think that's what we came to talk about tonight. How to use data in environmental reporting or investigations. So I kind of have a funnier question maybe. So kind of it's about the chicken or the egg. What came first, the data, and then you kind of build the story around it? Or you kind of had the story before and then you started looking for your data? So how the process enveloped in your stories? Maybe I think Christina, or you can start again now.
Sure. For me, it was definitely the data. So I looked at all the hydrological data, all the remote sensing data before I ever went to Cambodia. So I had all of that in the back of my mind. But it was only really when I was in Cambodia, in the field, wading through rice paddies and interviewing farmers, that I realized just what this very abstract data meant for the local communities in terms of their livelihoods and their fears for the future, now that the floods that they've known all their lives and the rhythms of nature that they've known all their lives and built their entire agricultural system around are changing. So for me, it was data first and story when I got to the field and saw how it was actually affecting people.
Yeah, also for me, in the Ohrid Lake story, we used a lot of visualizations and maps. We saw, for example, about the informal construction, we saw the hotels, restaurants, and cafes locations and their population. We used GIS for mapping and geography of many locations, which help us produce data. We had a database of the all homes built in the communities, including the year where it was built. And if it had a permit or not. And we gained the ability to evaluate these homes based on the physical location to another, the density, let's say, of the certain area. So also for me, in the Lake Ohrid story, we had a poking, or the community was beating me as a journalist, because they were saying, like, we see a lot of informal homes and buildings and we cannot see the lake, the shore. And I said, like, how can I fact check this if it's true and if there is a possibility of article? And data helped me produce my story as well.
Yeah, thank you. Inva, how was with your case?
Well, I had first the story and then data. I live in Tirana, but I am from Lora, the city in which Sušica rivers is. And well, basically, I saw it as passing nearby one day, and I tried to see it for the second day if it was like something really usual, or they were like just damaging the river. And I tried to have like some information from my expert colleagues, and I told to them that I saw this thing, and actually it showed that they were really damaging the river. And then I proceeded with request of information and then with the data. So it was like first the story and then to checking the.
Yeah, I think it's really fascinating how really diverse but also really important stories can be developed in just different ways like this. I wanted to invite the participants to think maybe if they're working on the story of their own, and what kind of difficulties do they have, or if they have any questions for you guys, especially with visualization or data. And we just got a question from Lev. Maybe you can just join the conversation and ask the question yourself, if that's okay. It would be nice to hear some of the participants. Yeah.
Hi. I'm not sure if you can see me, but hopefully you can hear me. So I wanted to ask what reception was like of your articles when they came out. Did it? Do you feel like it had a ripple effect on our media and also on society, that there was much more awareness of these issues than before? I don't know how strong or how big the environmental debate is in Albania, especially. But in many post-Soviet countries, there's this environmental issues are discarded as, it's not so important. We have other stuff to worry about, like feeding ourselves and things like that. So I was very curious how big the articles hit in your home countries.
Yeah, that's a really great question. If anyone just wants to jump in and
yeah, actually, I cannot wait to answer this question. In my case, about the illegal logging, we in Albania have the last beaches tree, which are like over 400 years, the only virgin trees in Europe, and they are based in Rajca, within the Srebrenica-Jablanica National Park. And it had a great impact, like Albania, a non-EU country, but all of this impact, because of this kind of trees in Albania are part of European Green Belt, which starts from Albania and flows up to Russia, to Siberia. And we have lynx or Balkan tiger there, like endangered animals. And after the article came out, it was a huge, like personally, for me, it had both, let's say, positive and negative side, because I also got a lot of harassment. And from that article, I swore that I will never write about mafia and this kind of problems when I live in my city. And after the article published, we had like two big environmental forum. The NGOs got protested. They made a protest, and also the UNESCO expert came into area. And people started, let's say, a social contract with the municipality of Libraș, the city that administrates the biggest national park in Albania. And they were, let's say, asking for accountability. And the NGOs, this environmental forum, so it had a great impact. Thank you for the question.
Thank you for your answer. Can I maybe just ask one more follow-up question?
Sure.
Yeah, of course.
It's not exactly relating to the impact of your article, though it was very interesting to hear. But I was wondering where all the wood went to from the illegal logging activities, and whether you have any data on that. Of course, it's kind of difficult to say since it's illegal.
So it is illegal because it was, let's say, it was healthy wood and it was in protected areas, and most of it is used inside Albania and outside of Albania for reproduction, for furniture, for selling, and it makes a lot of money. For example, a square meter of wood, it costs nearly 60 euros in Albania, and imagine all of those, let's say, meters, like how many money they produce. And after an impact, let's say, let's avoid the international impact, that it was a big impact. Let's say the impact was also for the farmers and for the villagers, or for the people who make this tour guiding. They felt relief, they felt sensibilized, and they felt that there was awareness about this issue, because they live with the trees, or they tree for them basically means life.
Okay, yeah, thanks a lot. Probably it is only going to get worse, because wood prices are going up extremely fast right now. So yeah, very unfortunate. Okay, I'll stop talking. I'm looking forward for what others have to say.
It's true, and if I can say something else, following up your question, is that I made also a comparison. I also compared Albania's situation with North Macedonia, and in North Macedonia they started alternative ways of heating. during the winter. For example, they used this kind of from the leaves of this kind of wood that, how can I say it, like ways of alternatives to heat, or because for the soaps, not like the wood. And we in Albania don't have that yet. We are not that enhanced also in laws, but also, let's say, in this kind of materials of alternative way of heating. And North Macedonia was way better than us in this case.
Yeah, thank you, Arlis. That was really interesting to hear. But I think the question about the impact of the published report is very important. And maybe Inva, what do you think? Coming also from the same country, how was your article perceived, especially in COVID times?
Well, that's what I will start to say. As the article, it was published like in the middle of the pandemic situation that we were facing. It didn't have really a big impact in our media, but what I can emphasize, or what it really makes me feel proud about what I wrote, is that the people who live nearby, they will continue to contact me and to say this to me, like more videos or more photos from the company which was destroying the river. And they were like clearly really interesting on knowing what was happening and what the ministry would say. And they were like calling me all the time. And I think that maybe sometimes we search for the impact at different medias or in online media, but the impact is really what people feel or what people do after that. And if they really care about, they will raise their voice and they will try to track the situation with the institution by themselves. So at the end, I feel that they will really help me the voice to media to put this problem to the institution. And yeah, my big regret it was that it was published during the pandemic, because people were really thinking like we care like much more about if there's a vaccine or what the government will do from the extra hospital COVID and things like that. And they put like environmental issues in the second or on a third plan. And yeah, that was what really happened.
If I can say something also to that, it is very interesting because I'm part of the OSC organization, and I'm there part of a group with media and investigation and environment. And during the pandemic time, the people in Albania or the companies, the environmental crimes were up because no one was making the watchdog and the police and everybody, and like dumping, let's say, hospital waste in the rivers or the hydropower that aren't built in the proper way that should be built. Like it was blessed out of environmental crimes. And I'm sure that not also in Albania, but also in other countries, if they for participant or can relate to.
Yeah, thank you for this as well. I think it's very important that the impact was with the local people. I think that's as equally important as a big media sharing of the story or like a big outreach program. I think actually in some cases it's even it speaks more to the story that the local people are so involved and they really want to take it seriously. They want to push it forward for a better course or to help fixing the problem even. But I think also Christina has a lot of things to say, especially that her story is in quite a different region and involving also a lot of the local population.
Yeah, for me it was a little different because I didn't publish about my own region. I'm originally from Austria and I'm living in France and I'm working in Cambodia, and I didn't publish in a local language either. So my article from the start was aimed at an international audience because the local people, the Khmer people, they know what the combination of factors is that they're facing. Basically, I was actually fairly surprised during the interviews that I did with farmers for my thesis that they could pinpoint fairly exactly even what hydropower, for example, was doing to the hydrological regime of the river, which influences the annual flood pulse. So, for example, they could say, yeah, they were expecting the flood to be delayed that year already because a very big dam by the Chinese government opened upstream. So for me, that was a very interesting insight, but the article reception itself for the international audience was fairly interesting for me because several people reached out, not just because of the content of the article, but also in the way it was presented. So, for example, the School of Journalism at Northwestern University in the US, a student contacted me because she was doing a story about how environmental issues can best be presented in the media. And for me, that was very gratifying because it was that aspect, that communication aspect, that intrigued me a lot in this particular topic. So for me, that was very positive feedback.
It's really great to hear that all of your stories had this positive impact and reactions. I'm sorry I didn't see the raised hands before, but I would like to give the floor to Anneke if she wants to say a comment or ask a question to the guest.
I have a question to Christina and Arlis. I'm not a journalist myself. I'm working at n-ost, and my task is to develop projects for journalists or media people. And my question is, what do you think, what level of expertise is necessary to really work with big data and with these data you used, for instance, Christina? Do you think it's possible for people without your scientific background just to open up the data banks and the internet websites and just work with these data, or do you really need this scientific background that you have?
I think if you have an understanding of the issues on the ground, it's very much possible. The thing is, Earth observation, remote sensing, it all sounds very complicated, but it took me about 3 weeks of working with the platform the cloud computing platform that I worked on, Google Earth Engine, to actually get the most important functionalities. They have very good documentation. It's freely available for non-commercial purposes. So for research, for investigations, for journalism. And even if you don't use that sort of, because you have to program a little bit in JavaScript, even though there's a very good overview, that can be a bit of a deterrent, I think, for a lot of people. Even if you don't do that, there are a lot of very good open access platforms like QGIS, which is a GIS platform that people can use, and there are lots of tutorials online. So I think it takes a little time to actually learn the tools that you have to use. But once you know that, it's a very solid basis on which to investigate pretty much anything, because the data is available freely. Even if you don't use Google Earth Engine, you can download all the Sentinel data directly from the European Space Agency, for example. You can download Landsat data from the American Space Agency, which goes back all the way to 1984. So which provides a really good series of data if you want to track changes over long periods of time in environmental issues. You can also download that freely. So I think it's all there, and the skills do take a few days or weeks to acquire, but once you have them, they're incredibly valuable in terms of visualization and pinpointing the data that you need.
Yeah, adding that, I would say that there are a lot of tools and programs which are free out there, like, for example, Global Forest Watch, and even the layers, and it has like tutorials. And when I used it in Albania in my article, I didn't see, for example, in media, it wasn't culture, because it also depends on people, on the audience. But when I see, for example, now I am happy that I inspired also other journalists, and it's easy to use. For example, I've seen that in reports and data statistics, also in Inva's article. But when it comes to a length or to an audience, for example, that it takes more depth or let's say investigative reporting. And when I use, for example, ArcGIS or AutoCAD or a program like that, this scientific background, of course, that it's it's a lot of helpful. And I think that you as the program manager in this organization that you represent, that to make more programs for journalists to facilitate our trainings, there is a need for this background, and the future is data. So we are developing with data. Like it's a relationship that we need to learn every day more. Thank you.
Yeah, just before I take the next question, Camille is asking if you guys can share some of the platforms you mentioned or the programs in the chat so people can take a look at them later. Just a reminder, we have 10 minutes left for the public streaming. And I think maybe time for 2 or 3 more questions if we keep it short. I think Boris is turn now, yeah, so please.
Yeah, thank you very much, Tsvetelina. I have a question about let's say the right amount of data which you use in reporting. So, for example, if my goal is to reach as wide an audience as possible and to be, let's say, engaging with the audience, but also report on a high level, do you feel that the more data you use to back up your story is always better, or do you feel that at some point, if you maybe use too many, I don't know, complicated graphs or refer to data too often, that then maybe the story gets lost, that at some point it loses its appeal to the audience? Like, is there some kind of something like the right amount of data, or is it always better to have more?
It is a fine line for having data and a story. Of course, the data is very important because it backups the story, but if the article is just about the data, for example, then it's just a report, or and people want to read people's story, and it is a very fine line, I think, between them, the balance.
Personally, I think that it depends on your audience and on the way you present your data. So if I know that I'm going to be writing for an international audience, parametric press is aimed mostly at university students, I can presuppose that they have a certain level of understanding when it comes to environmental issues and reading graphs, for example. But even so, I think by making certain elements interactive and letting the audience choose which level of information they actually want and how far they want to engage with the content, sort of reduces the amount of data they're barraged with, just from my side. So I think that's a fairly big advantage if you have an online platform where you can actually basically pick and choose how much information you want as a reader.
Yeah, that's very true. Inva, do you have some experience with this? With the terms of how much data do you need, or especially when we're talking about freedom of information request type of data and some like legal data, how easy is to balance that in reports?
Well, I would say the same thing, that depends on the audience, because if you want to refer data and numbers, probably you are speaking with more complex audience, let's just say with experts and with other journalists or with other people who are studying the same field. And if you want to speak with the larger audience, you should speak through the stories, and you should speak through the field. You should go and check by yourself and see it, and telling the story through people's voice. But I think that we should simplify the data. It's not just using the proper data or the proper apps or the proper graphics, but how you transmit this information to the audience. I'm actually working for another article regarding to the tropical storms and how it probably will affect to the Europe. This is something that everyone that I asked before said that it's like it's too far from the Europe and they will not ever affect Europe, at least like for at least 100 years from now. But the thing it is that, well, I am interviewing a scientist which is studying the tropical storm. She is from Holland, and well, she said that actually tropical storms are really close to the Europe, and if we are continuing to deny the climate changing effects, probably we will face the same situation that the Caribbean islands are facing now, or other tropical countries. So I think that depends on how we transmit this information to the audience, because we are, at the end of the day, we speak about the environment, about nature, and saying the truth. If we put showbiz in one hand, and if we put environmental issues in the other hand, people will go to the showbiz. But we are the right people to make people aware which more is like vital for them. But we should use a simple way to tell this. So sometimes graphics and data, they make like people lost in numbers and information. So it depends on the audience. If we want to speak with numbers and with data, we are certainly going through the more specific audience, which is like in low number. But if we want to speak to the larger audience, we should speak with like simple videos, simple photos, and talking through their voice.
Yeah, I can definitely agree for my point of view that it is about data, it is about how you present it, about the public and the audience. And there is a finer balance. I think all of you agree on that there is a finer balance between amount of data, presentation, and then the needs of the audience and the knowledge of the audience that can be assumed. I think we have 3 more minutes for a final question. I see in the chat there is a question from Toby for Christina. Maybe he can ask it as well and join the conversation.
Hi, I'm interested in how you might follow up in Cambodia. And you mentioned that you thought the local people that you talked with knew about the impacts of climate change, but surely that's not what you would tell a Cambodian reporter about whether they should report on climate change. So that's kind of 2 questions, I guess, but I'm curious about what kinds of reporting you would follow up with in Cambodia about the effects of climate change.
One of the things I would be really interested in is to see how local people can actually participate in the design of the measures that are being implemented to prepare for climate change. So there are a lot of development projects going on in the area, especially aimed at infrastructure, irrigation infrastructure in particular, because one of the main problems is that with the annual monsoon flood, not having the magnitude that it used to, not having the duration that it used to, a lot of the crops need more irrigation water. And so what international development agencies are doing, what the Cambodian government is doing a lot is to either rehabilitate existing infrastructure that fell into disrepair or constructing new infrastructure, canals, gates, channels. But the problem is that a lot of the people who design these measures, engineers from France, from Australia, they come in, they look at the area, they do a couple of simulations, and then they decide what's best, often without involving the local population. And as a consequence, a lot of the measures don't have the efficiency or the sustainability that they could have if the local population were involved. I've seen gates that were destroyed by erosion during the first flood that they faced, bank collapses of newly constructed channels. So what I would really love to learn more about, and what I think would make sense in an international context to also know more about, is how those people, like the locals who know the land, who've lived there all their lives, who know what they need in terms of irrigation, how they can be better involved in, or how they can participate in the decision-making process in an effective way to design measures that are actually sustainable in the long term. And as for Cambodian journalists, I think that even if people in the Delta know what the issues are, people in the capital city, Phnom Penh, for example, don't necessarily do. The distance is not very far, but since there's no public transport, since even the roads are not very good, it's a much larger distance than it really physically is. So I think that even in the capital, in the Phnom Penh Post, in local media, it would make a lot of sense to just write about how different factors combine to produce the effects that we're currently seeing. The political situation in Cambodia is very difficult.
I'm sorry, Christina, I just need to interrupt you for a second. No, it's okay. It seems like it's going in a very interesting way, our discussion. We're going to continue after the live stream is over.
Okay.
So everyone in the Zoom call are just invited to stay. No, it was really interesting to listen to. I'm sorry, I had to interrupt. I'll just give the word to Paulina for a closing, some closing words, and then we continue with the conversation.
Thank you, Tsvetelina. Thank you for keeping the time. And yes, you are totally right. We will stay here. We will continue the discussion, so no worries. Thanks a lot for Tsvetelina for hosting and moderating. Thanks to our guests and to the participants. I think it was a really interesting, vivid, and very hands-on discussion that we had tonight, and we will continue now. We will stop the streaming right now. Register next time if you want to join us for the informal part as well. And yeah, stay tuned. We will inform you very soon about our next kitchen talk. And please feel free to send us your feedback or topic suggestions. We are very open. We're always looking forward to nice ideas and happy to organize next chat with you. So goodbye and cheers. Have a nice evening. Okay.